Welcome to our September Lipedema Patient Roundtable. We are delighted that you are with us. This is our fourth one. We started this out not knowing if this was ever going to be a thing or if it ever would happen again, and it has grown and grown and grown. I know you're looking at the screen and saying, where's Dr. Herbst, right? Well, guess what? We're all saying the same thing too. Bottom line is Dr. Lindy McHutchison and Dr. Herbst have said that they will be here tonight. They are welcome to pop on whenever they can, but it's a great opportunity for me to do sort of a disclaimer to start out. This is called a Lipedema Patient Roundtable. And everybody that was originally invited as panelists are patients, sharing their own journeys, sharing what they've learned, what works for them, what doesn't work for them. We've all learned it's not one size fits all, and there are a variety of different answers, as many different answers as there are people. So we do not want in any way to set the expectation that we are offering medical guidance. That is between you and your doctor. And I want to introduce our esteemed panelists first. So far we have Pattie Cornute from Lipedema Fitness, Cheryl Scoledge, Lipedema and Food Sensitivities, the Lippy Butterfly, Angelique Charles, Siouxsie Boshoff, Lipedema Living, and PGP. I decided I can't just call her Pale because that doesn't sound right. Pale Ginger Pear. Cara, Cruz, welcome. So good to see you. Hey, you're getting ready for a big surgery, aren't you, Cara?
Yeah, next week we're tackling the thighs. So I cannot wait. I'm like a kid waiting for Christmas break from school. Like I'm super anxious and just want next week to get here already. Yeah.
I bet. Well, we are all feeling for you. Last month I wore my PGP, Little Miss PGP t-shirt. I bought one. Hope a lot of people will buy your shirts to help support your journey. And we love how you're using this platform and the condition to share and inspire lots of people. Cynthia Pominville, Heather Zunker is saying, congrats, Cara. We know Nita Cluis is out there. We love hearing your chat. We love hearing your thoughts. And in Canada, Kim Wilson, so nice to have you all here. We want to get right to it. And I want to start out asking each of our panelists, what is the one big thing that they either learned or were inspired by since we last got together? So I'm going to start with you, Pattie Cornute.
Okay, so for me this month, a lot had to do with mental health. We had a lot of discussion in our group about that, and something I read over the weekend really kind of stuck with me, and it was to let go of the blame of having lipedema, right? It's not a personal failure that we have this condition, but it got me thinking that with all the things that we individually try to make our symptoms better, you know, our ways of eating, our exercise, you know, supplements that we try, treatments that we try, there's so many things and we all seem to respond differently. But every time something doesn't work, I feel like I know with myself, I kind of feel like shaming myself that, all right, this didn't work, you know, and so I think it's really important to stop and think about that. It's not just being okay with having lipedema. And eventually you kind of get to that place where you are. I feel like I'm okay with having lipedema and I stand up for myself about having it. I don't hold any personal blame about having that. But as far as the continually trying things that, you know, do and don't work, I really wanted to try to focus on that this month.
What about you, Cheryl? You are shining tonight. The Lipedema Diva is in the house. You have a brand new logo. And tell us what you've learned this last month.
I think one of the interesting things that came up in our group was the connection. Of course, I'm always talking about food sensitivities, but some of our members have started seeing a potential connection to seasonal allergies and food sensitivities and symptoms with lipedema. So as an example, ragweed is in the same family as some foods. And when their ragweed allergies started developing, they started having more issues with those particular foods as well. So I just thought that was pretty darn fascinating.
That is pretty darn fascinating, and a great segue too, since I mentioned your logo, to mention that we have a new logo for our YouTube channel, the Lipedema channel, created by none other than the Lippy Butterfly, Angelique Charles. You know, lipedema is a part of your lives, but it's not the only part. And Angelique is a very talented graphic artist that has given her gift to help uplift the community. So I want to publicly say, Angelique, thank you so, so, so much. As I also welcome Dr. Herbst. We adore you, and we are so, so glad you are here, and we promise not to overwhelm you with any questions. And by the way, any questions that come up and we don't know the answer, guess what we're going to say? We don't know the answer yet. And that's okay, because we're on our way to get answers. And Dr. Herbst, I started out by asking each of the ladies, what did they learn this past month? And so now I'm asking this of Angelique. Go for it, Angelique, you wonderful graphic designer, you.
I just really appreciate the opportunity to get back to life, you know, get back to what I was doing. What I learned this past month was really that I started fascia blasting, and it was something different. It didn't seem like something that would necessarily work, but I noticed a softening in my tissues, and it was really inspirational to me and a reminder to just not give up. I had been not wanting to get into my Flexi Touch, and this time getting into it after over a year, I was able to latch it without any extension pieces. So it reminded me that the things that I'm doing aren't in vain, even though sometimes the progress seems so minor. It's okay to just keep going and keep going, keep finding new answers until we reach a complete answer.
That's excellent. Keep going. We always encourage everyone, don't give up. Don't give up. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And so why don't I move to you, Siouxsie? What did you learn this last month?
This last month, okay, so I had a really interesting thing happen, especially over the last few weeks. So one of the things that I do for my channel is I'm always looking for other women with lipedema on Instagram. So I follow the hashtag lipedema. And as I was following it, I was finding these different posts from various people, and I am astounded at how many women are living colorful, brilliant, amazing lives that have lipedema. And yes, their lipedema has interfered, kind of like how it did for me, or any one of you may have reality on this, where you thought you were trying to live your normal life, but something wasn't right. And I'm coming across all these women, but they think that they're alone. So I had this humbling experience where I had somebody that I was talking to about my lipedema living who doesn't have lipedema. And she realized that a mutual friend of ours had it. And I said, yeah, for sure, with her shape, she probably does. And then I found out that she was in the hospital earlier this year, and that she's having connective tissue issues, and she doesn't know what's wrong with her. And they were like, you need to post all over your personal Facebook about your condition. And I was like, okay, you're right, I do. So that's really what it's about. And it takes some bravery to do that outside of just that. So that was my big aha moment, and I'm resolute to do more of that.
We appreciate your vulnerability, because it opens up the door for everybody to be vulnerable. We are really all in this journey together. We've all got something. Whether if it's not lipedema, we got something, right? PGP, little Miss PGP, what did you learn this last month?
I think that this last month I realized how much my core followers are really invested and have my back, because this last couple weeks or so has been a huge mental thing for me, because as I'm taking my before surgery pictures for my own benefit, I'm what I jokingly refer to as more of a normal thick now. Like, my curves are more normal shaped and not those super crazy lipedema bumps and dents. And it's weird for me to kind of process, because it's been 20 some years of not being that. And so I've had this huge emotional, mental, how am I going to handle doing the thighs? Because that's going to be big. And like, so my posts have been a little bit more probably melancholy, but my supporters have been amazing, amazing, amazing women.
Well, that's because you're pretty amazing too, and you give and you share, and it's wonderful. And speaking of sharing, you invited your doctor, Dr. Jaime Schwartz. Hi, how are you? I know, it's the notorious Dr. Schwartz. It's great to meet you. We are starting out our roundtable by asking, what is the one thing that you learned this last month? And of course, we're all on the edge of our seats to find out what Dr. Herbst learned this last month. Is there one special takeaway? Is there one thing that really struck you, Dr. Herbst, this last month?
Working with Jaime and learning about the deep fascia. Because, you know, you think of fascia as kind of an indestructible piece of tissue, and you're going to blast it and it's going to handle it and everything's going to be fine. It's just going to bound permission to begin. Looking at the fascia and seeing that it was almost completely destroyed in some people made me realize that it's not, our connective tissue is not indestructible, and we really have to take care of it. And I even asked Jaime today, I said, what is the one thing that you do when you do your surgery to make sure that that fascia is okay? And he says, I'm not going to damage it. You know, I work so I don't damage it.
Wow.
So,
you know, that's a really good segue. And by the way, Dr. Schwartz, what's the one big thing you learned this last month? Inquiring minds want to know.
I don't think it's last month. I think I learn things daily. Every day I learn something new. Actually, well, I'll stick on the same theme, and having Dr. Herbst around has been phenomenal. I mean, you know, we're really understanding lipedema a lot more, and I think I'm the surgical side of it, and I understand the anatomy and I understand those things, but you know, it all goes together, and you know, Dr. Herbst is really, you know, putting together the skin things and stuff like that. And I think she and I together, we're actually starting to notice different things, because hopefully our goal in the long run is to actually change the way we look at it, even with different people and different types, you know. So I can't say one thing, but it's an ongoing thing. It's which is why, you know, I guess why I enjoy it still, or enjoy it a lot. So. Well,
it is just so delightful to meet you. I mean, PGP has raved about you for so long. And we said at the outset, and by the way, hello, Dr. McHutchison. It's wonderful to see you too. We said from the outset that this is not a medical clinic. We are not offering medical advice tonight. We've got a boatload of questions that came in. We don't have the answers to all of them, but we'll do the very best we can to just encourage, inspire, and educate where we can without giving any medical advice. So those are our boundaries this evening. I did have one question for you, Dr. Schwartz, that came in from our viewers, and it was about your manual extraction method. Could it cause potential damage to the tissues, veins, and lymphatics? That's a concern that some people have.
Actually, Dr. Herbst was supposed to be in the surgery with me today, and we filmed it. So what we did is we actually made an incision, and we looked at what it looks like inside with all the lipedema tissue and everything. We did the manual, and then we looked at it again, and you can see that nothing's damaged. Little tiny crossing veins, things that you would think would, you know, be hurt with even liposuction, the way we do it, it's all there. So it's actually the opposite. And you know, most people, when most people say they have Charlie horses and they want to massage their legs really deep, but it hurts so much. So we're basically doing what they want to do just when they're asleep. So, and the way I describe it, actually, I would say I'm the most inflexible person on the planet. If somebody put me to sleep and stretch me, you know, and that's what we're doing. So, but no, I would never do anything that I thought would make something worse ever. It's just how I can't function that way. If my wife had lipedema, this is exactly what I would do for her. And so, but no, we look at it constantly. And
good.
Yeah.
Good. That's excellent. And we know that surgery isn't the option that everyone chooses, but it's great to have you on the panel tonight to answer those kinds of questions. Now, Angelique, you had submitted some questions prior to this evening, and the H word came up a lot, and it came up from a lot of the people that had pre-registered. Can I give you the floor to ask your H question?
Absolutely. I was wondering if we know for sure that there is a connection between lipedema and hormonal imbalances, and how that affects our cycles, whether they be heavy or missed cycles. Really, what connection is there?
So the other part of your question also was about birth control. Is there something that lipedema women need to be careful of when it comes to birth control? So who wants to answer the question?
I mean, first, I don't think we have all the right answers. We don't have studies, as far as I know, on this. I would suspect that any birth control that had hormones in it could potentially sort of, be problematic for lipedema, especially if they had very androgenic progesterone. So birth control hormone usually is estrogen and progesterone. And most of the estrogens are low estrogen now compared to what they were 20, 30 years ago. But the progesterones, there's different types. And some progesterones are very androgenic, which means they actually promote weight gain. Other progesterones are not at all. They actually have an anti-androgen. So like the Depo-Provera injection, for an example, that has a very androgenic, there's actually weight gain with it. So I think that contraception is super important. If you don't want a pregnancy, you need to use contraception. Also, we use contraception for a host of other things other than just preventing pregnancy, for endometriosis, for PMS, for pelvic pain, for pregnancy regulation, for period regulation. But I would just say that to try and stay on the lowest dose that you can and the lowest potency that you can to actually to get the effect that you need, avoiding the super androgenic progesterones. And I think the same thing with any hormone therapy. I personally think that that when it comes to hormone replacement therapy, you have to see why you're taking it. The jury has been out in. Is it good for this? Is it good for that? If you're having hot flashes and you're not sleeping and your quality of life is miserable because you don't have hormones, I say take it. It's better to be 6 feet off the cliff than to be teetering on the cliff. If you have other reasons for it, then take it. But if you could avoid it, I think you should avoid it.
Please.
So I was reading about hormones last night just to make sure that I could just barely keep up with Lindy. And I found out that, and I knew this before, but it really sat home with me last night, is that if you look at hypermobility or the literature on EDS and progesterone and estrogen, there's a lot more stuff out there, a lot more conversation about it. And they feel that progesterone exacerbates joint laxity. And so I think what Lindy said, the lower the dose, the better, even with micronized progesterone, 100 versus 200. But I think we definitely need, if you have hypermobility, you have to think about that in addition to your lipedema, because your lipedema and your hypermobility are probably woven tightly together.
Karen is exactly right. Progesterone actually is a smooth muscle relaxer. So it causes all smooth muscle to relax, which is also connected to probably related to joints. And it would probably do that with the same reason.
Is lipedema an autoimmune disease?
Dr. Jaime Schwartz and I did an interview a couple weeks ago, and it kind of got mislabeled as autoimmune. So I was gonna ask Dr. Jaime exactly how he classifies lipedema so that we have his definition to go with the interview.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you pointed that out. And that was something when we saw the article after, it was, I'll tell you, the thing with COVID is, we now do Zoom things. And so we did a Zoom, and so it may have been misconstrued, but no, that it's not, Dr. Herbst be the one, but there's no autoimmune. And that was a misclassification. We let them know, but I guess, I don't know, I don't think they've changed it yet or anything, but no, it's not. We never discussed that at all. And it's a misprint, which I just hope they retract or write something there, because and the sad thing is, that's an issue, because people will see that and they'll start thinking, and then that goes off in a tangent. So the first thing that I did when I saw that was we told them to change, we let them know to change it, but yeah, so I'm sorry about that, but that's a great question though.
Okay, good. Excellent.
Can I say something to that just real quick?
Dr. Herbst, you can always say anything at any time. I will zip. Go for it.
Well, I just, I did not know that, for example, you can get an entire autoimmune panel against all of the really cool receptors in the body, like the adrenergic receptors and the hormonal receptors. There's a panel in Germany that you can order. And I was like, yeah, right. How many people are going to have antibodies against the, seriously. Had 2 patients come back, I ordered them on one after I saw it on another, and they both had antibodies against adrenergic receptors and a couple other receptors. And I was pretty shocked, because I would never have pegged them for autoimmune disease. They had lipedema and they had POTS, and the POTS part really is the one that's got the autoimmune component. And yesterday, was that yesterday? It's so long ago. Jaime and I were with a patient, and she had acrocyanosis of her feet. And so she had, she's got some form of autonomic dysfunction. So could it be that it really is an autoimmune disease affecting our ability to regulate the size of our vessels? We don't regulate them correctly, and therefore under high pressure, they just leak a lot more. And that creates that fluid, and it starts getting bound up to the glycosaminoglycans, but you can't bind up enough, and then it overwhelms the lymphatic system, inflammation, and lipedema. Could it be? I'm just throwing it out.
Yeah, because it makes sense, because so many, so many lipedema patients, I would say at least 50% have livedo reticularis, which is that dysautonomia with their capillaries are sort of dilating, and they could easily be dilating and spilling. So yeah, I think that's an incredible points that you both make.
Yeah, and actually with that, the one thing that we're figuring out with all the inflammation and all the changes that are in the local milieu anyway, so is it the chicken or the egg? Is it autoimmune to begin with? But I think when the body's reacting over and over and over again, I do think you can wind up getting something like that. We see that, totally different topic. We see that with breast implants, and you see that when you get a constant chronic inflammatory response to things. So, but
PGP, I saw you raise your hand a little. Did you want to say something?
I also have celiac disease, which is autoimmune.
Yep.
So I have celiac, and I notice that if I get gluten, I puff up. My legs puff up. I mean, aside from all of the other issues with celiac, but I've noticed, especially since we tackled the lower legs, if I accidentally get gluten, my lower legs puff up really, really bad. So it might not necessarily be autoimmune yet, but they kind of interact, it seems like, at least for me so far. I've noticed that my lipedema flares up and hurts more if I have something that has the celiac gluten side to it.
Interesting. And Cheryl, I see you nodding vigorously, so jump on in there.
From the perspective of the autoimmune community, because I ended up following the autoimmune protocol, which is a dietary plan a couple of years ago, because I had Hashimoto's. But in learning from that community, once you have one autoimmune disease, it's the likelihood of getting another autoimmune disease is very, very high. And so they believe that once you have one, you like another. That if you have a leaky gut and some type of triggering event, then that can trigger the autoimmunity. So originally I went onto the autoimmune protocol because I had Hashimoto's. So I went, well, you know, maybe lipedema is or not, but I do have an autoimmune disease, so I'll try it. And it did seem to help me quite a bit. And I had one more point. Oh, that's it. So in speaking with a lot of lipedema ladies, there is a very, very large amount of ladies who do have a autoimmune disease. So, you know, the question's just out there. So.
I, believe it or not, had more questions about essential oils and or collagen powder. Are these recommended? Are there forms that are recommended? Or do some of our patient panelists have brands or kinds of oils or powders that they use that help the condition? Who wants to jump in on this one?
I just want to say, if you want to talk about essential oils, you should invite Linda Ann Kahn to be a panelist, and she's like on your next time.
Yes, you can see that interview on the Lipedema channel on YouTube. And if you haven't subscribed yet, everybody, you need to subscribe out there because that's a great channel. We're always producing content. She's an expert on aromatherapy and essential oils and says it does have amazing impacts. Thank you for mentioning that, Dr. Herbst. She is wonderful. Siouxsie, you said that you also have had experience with essential oils?
No, I was going to ask the question about the collagen because you mentioned both of them in the same thing. So I did have a question about that, and I don't know if one of the doctors can answer it. I know it's not a clinical thing, but I think it's just a health aspect. So having Ehlers-Danlos syndrome as well and the hypermobility, one of the things that makes sense to me to supplement with is grass-fed, grass-finished collagen powder as part of my daily routine. But is that actually helping, and does it help? I feel like it does, but does it help lipedema at all? Because even some of my followers had questions along those lines.
I had a conversation with Claire Francomano, and she was at the FDRS conference, and she said a patient of mine was taking collagen, and I said, oh yeah, that's not really good. But after they took enough, they actually started feeling better. And she told me that she really thinks there's something to it. And she moved to Indiana to figure it out. Like, she uprooted her husband. She could have just retired, but instead she was like, I got to figure this out. And she wanted to go to Indiana because they have experts in muscle and connective tissue there. And so I think hopefully she's doing something. I told her I wouldn't contact her right away, but it's been a year since I said I wouldn't contact her. So I should. And find out what she's doing and what she still thinks about that.
Interesting. And Pattie, you had something to add about this.
Yeah, I've tried on a couple occasions to use the collagen, and I had the grass-fed into my coffee, no taste, into to drink it. So there wasn't an issue with me taking it, but I noticed that I started to get like a plantar fasciitis pain. And both times I tried it, I got that pain. I stopped taking the collagen and the plantar fasciitis went away. I don't know if it's a coincidence. I don't know if it's a seasonal thing, but I've tried twice personally.
So since we all last got together, and I always say since last month because we've been doing these meetings every month, the gene was discovered. The gene AKR1C1. What does this mean for those with lipedema and the research about lipedema?
I guess that's mind, isn't it? I think Lindy would understand more about the progesterone aspect of it, but we did already talk about progesterone. And so it does have a link to progesterone. But I will say that this was one particular family that it affected, and it doesn't affect, that one gene is not present in like a huge number of women with lipedema, to my knowledge, because we actually sent over 100 samples to him and to Matteo Bertelli in Italy, and I think only 6 ladies showed up with something kind of interesting. So I don't think it's like the gene, but it certainly gives us a hint that something's going on with the hormones. So, but it's not like, it's not prevalent in everybody, but what if other genes in that pathway were mutated, and that it's not just that gene, there's other genes. So I think a little bit more work needs to be done. But that group is bent on finding the genes for lipedema, and they're coming up with their own IRB so they can move their research forward a lot faster. So we'll see.
Good. I love when there are breakthroughs, and we know that you're on the forefront of making those breakthroughs happen to Dr. Herbst. So we're delighted about that. We had some comments from our audience. Sandy Darley, we're so glad you're out there. She wanted to mention, because she is a medical aromatherapist, she's been using a horse chestnut cream that has been helpful with pain and venous inflammation. So thank you for that tidbit, Sandy Darley. And she also asks, what is the suggested protocol for using vibration plates in relation to steaming or a hot tub? Heat first, then vibrate, or vibrate first, then heat? And I know some of you have vibration plates, so what is the protocol that you use?
I just say you should do the vibration plate whenever you feel like doing it. Like I do it before I go in the pool. Sometimes I do it after I get out of the pool. Sometimes I do it just in the afternoon because I haven't moved enough. That's just me. I don't know, but.
Yeah, I just kind of do it whenever. Now, I do try to use it for at least 10 minutes after a shower or bath, because I personally feel it helps move a little bit easier when the legs are a little bit softer from the heat, but it could also be in my head. I really don't know.
Gotcha.
I've been trying to do my vibration plate after a bath so that it's warm and hopefully everything starts moving. So I've been trying to do that same.
Good. Interesting. I'm learning so much tonight. You know, you had mentioned pools when you, in your question, Siouxsie, and we've talked often at these roundtables about how important being in a pool and swimming and what great exercise that is. One of the questions that came in from our audience is about chlorine, and should we be careful about being in a chlorine pool? Will it have a toxic effect on our bodies, especially for lipedema women? Does anybody have thoughts about chlorine? We can always say, we don't know.
Yeah, I'll just say I don't think it has any. I couldn't put in relationship to people with women with lipedema, but I will say that I think a lot of us are starting to look at chlorine as not to be, and in salt water would be obviously better and stuff like that. So I think a lot of us are just like are looking at all those things, and similar to like deodorant. Like I haven't used aluminum deodorant in years, so you know I think we're just all looking at what we put into our bodies and what we're around. I think we're all just becoming more mindful of that. So
I agree, absolutely. And Pattie?
Yeah, I read up on that. I don't personally see a reaction. You know, I don't have an issue with it, but I read that if you're rinsing off before, like my gym has the shower right on the pool deck, and you rinse off before, it kind of gives you a little bit of a barrier for then going into the pool. And then I do the same thing right when I get out. I take a shower and get all that off as quickly as I can. But I haven't noticed anything personally, and I'm in the pool. I used to be before all this, you know, weekly. So
I think your point about being extra mindful about what we're putting into our bodies and on our bodies is so key. I think we could all nod and say, yep, we agree with that. I don't have lipedema, but I just recently, in fact, I'm in the throes of a detox right now. Oh, so much fun. Like I want to bite my fingernails. But what they've told me is to be careful about the creams I'm putting on my body, because I'm absorbing some of that fat. And they said that that can impact the efficacy of my detox. So who knew? I didn't know. Here I was slathering stuff all over me, and it ended up not being good for me. So
actually, from a different standpoint, I'll give you an interesting statistic with that. So when we do silicone breast implants, people worry about them rupturing and absorbing silicone. If you look at your regular shampoo or conditioner, you'll see polysiloxane, dimethicone. Those are all silicones and not medical grade. when you put those on your armpit especially, or your scalp, you'll absorb 1,000 to 10,000 times more silicone than you ever would if an implant inside you ruptured. So that's what happens to our pores. We do take in everything that's there. And so, again, you know, it's just, we don't really know the long-term effects, but we are seeing that with a lot of different things. And so that's something we've known for a long, long time.
So if there is such a thing as a silver lining in everything, one of the questions that came in speaks to that silver lining, and it's this. It seems that many women with lipedema look younger than their age compared to others. Is this related to lipedema? Is it related to connective tissue disorders? And if so, how? Is it a real thing? Can any of our panelists speak to this more youthful appearance? And of course, my panelists are all smiling and saying, yeah, well, you know.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the non-scientific version of it. Okay. Everybody that I meet with lipedema is healthier than I am. They eat better than I do. They exercise. They really take care of themselves. And I think that's honestly it. I think they've dealt with this for so long, and they will try. You all try anything you can to really. And so I think it's just the overall health. That's my thing. That's not the scientific version of it, but that's what I see. So. Okay.
You were smiling a lot, PGP, but I want to go to you, Cheryl. What do you think?
In the Ehlers-Danlos community, they say that we have youthful faces, but very old looking hands. So I don't know if anyone else can attest to that, but within the Ehlers-Danlos community, they're always talking about that.
Lindsay Miller-Voss. Oh, Lindsay, Lippy and Hippie. Wait, I just interviewed her. She's awesome. Thanks for being out there, Lindsay. And so did you, PGP. You interviewed her as well. In a recent interview, she says, Dr. Herbst says she suggests taking particular enzymes. She mentioned VitalZim by name. Is there a suggested amount or a guideline that we can follow for how much we should be taking? And again, we're not dispensing medical advice here, but could you speak to enzymes, Dr. Herbst?
Oh, the best person for that would be Linda Ann Kahn again, but I will say that, and she recommends VitalZyme, but there's all sorts of enzymes, and there's a lot of foods that have enzymes in them. So really you could eat your enzymes if you want to do it that way, which is obviously a more natural way of doing it, like papaya, kiwi, even guacamole has enzymes, or not guacamole, avocados. You want to take, well, you can take enzymes one of two ways, or both. You can take it on an empty stomach. If you take it on an empty stomach, it gets absorbed across the M as in Mary cells, and it goes directly into the lymphatics, which then bring the enzymes into the blood vessels, and it goes wherever it needs to go. I think it breaks down the connective tissue. When I was doing an ultrasound on a lady, and she had Derkham's disease. She had like diffuse Derkham's disease, but I told her she was probably one big lipoma because her fat was all fibrotic everywhere that I looked, and it kind of in waves, like someone had stirred up the fat and then it had kind of sloshed, and then it was very odd. And I said, you know, I think if you take enzymes, you'll feel better. And she's Linda Ann's patient, and Linda Ann said she's feeling much better. So, you know, if you want to, you know, reduce inflammation and fibrosis, I think that's one good way. If you want to help digest your food because you have pancreatic insufficiency, which I think a lot of people with EDS have, and I think the more fluid you have in your body, the harder it is for you to absorb, and so the harder it is for you to digest, and it would be good to take it with food. So, like if you're eating something that you know you just don't digest really well, like for example fat, you know, you could take some enzymes. If you want to reduce your inflammation and your fibrosis, take it without food. And as I said, there's all different kinds: nattokinase, serrapeptase, wobenzyme has been around for years and years. If you look up wobenzyme on the internet, you can find big essays on how good wobenzyme is and all the good things it does. And it's based on studies with primarily trauma surgeons who use it. They don't want to give medications for some reason. Dr. Schwartz would probably know better than I do, but like trauma surgeons and maxillofacial surgeons have used enzymes for years to reduce inflammation.
Excellent. You know, going back to the question about hormones, Megan Frew, and we're so glad you're out there, Megan, tonight. This is her second roundtable. She says she cannot thank us enough for doing these, and she's a huge Pattie fan. Her group has changed my life. I love hearing that. We hear that all the time from people. You women who are the social influencers, and you doctors who have devoted your lives to helping women with lipedema, you are making such a difference, and you are beacons of light to these women. So she is asking about menopause because she said, I got a ways to go before I reach that time in my life. Lucky you. But I've read that it can really progress lipedema. Any tips or thoughts on menopause? Thank you and bless you, she says. We just love you, Megan. That was so nice. So thoughts about menopause? It's not my favorite time of the season, let me tell you, but Pattie, go for it.
Yeah, I just wrapped up my year-long perimenopause. So I've really noticed a change in my legs this past year. Heavier, you know, harder to get around, and definitely something I'm struggling with right now.
I think one thing to sort of keep in mind is, you know, puberty is sort of one of the big triggers. Well, menopause is the opposite of puberty. It's just puberty in reverse, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's a transition of these hormones just going crazy. So just speaking from what makes sense, if there's a way, any way that we could potentially level that out in a way to stop having the peaks and valleys and the crazy hormone shifts and swings that happen, I think that would probably be the maybe the best way to get through. So how do you do that? It would have to be in some sort of ovulation management to do that, so that you didn't have the huge, you know, highs and lows, because menopause and puberty is just everything sort of working its way to start or working its way to stop. And you don't just stop ovulating or start ovulating. It's a transition that happens over months, over years. So I think if we could potentially figure out a way to even those fluctuations of highs and lows that happen over that time period out, that would be the best. Now, how do we do that? Right now, the only way we know to do it is hormonally, maybe with a low-dose birth control pill. So that's just me sort of thinking out loud, is a potentially something we can maybe look at in the future to help transition and make it not so drastic.
Yeah. Good. You know, I will have another surgery question for you, Dr. Schwartz, and it is this: could surgery for lipedema reverse lymphedema?
That's actually a very, very interesting question. And the reason is, and that's why I love having Dr. Herbst around, I actually have, I have a patient that yeah, I mean, I don't want to get, when I've done our treatment, I've seen a lot of stuff get better. And I've seen patients where when their feet are swollen and they come, especially one lady, she came back to see me and I said, I learned from you all also. I said, what compression are you wearing? And she looked at me and said, I'm your worst patient ever. And I said, but your feet look better. And she said, it's gotten better after our first stage. So I think there's an aspect to it where, like Cara, for example, she's got full blown lipolymphedema. We can make things better. And I think as we start tackling more the lymphedema portion, her legs will be smaller. We'll get to that point. But I think when you're at that tipping point, we'll call it the stage 3, and it's just so inflamed and things are really getting backed up. I think if we're able to remove that and decrease the inflammatory process, I think you will actually see, we'll call that a reversal, but I think it's more just actually allowing things to flow more, if that makes sense. So, but that's what we see. And actually, can I just go back to the previous question too?
Sure.
We get this, actually Dr. Eicher and I talk a lot about this too, because we see a lot of patients in common, and a lot of women we see, a lot of people start self-diagnosing in their 30s. And then people come and say, I'm planning pregnancy, but I am diagnosed with lipedema. What should we do? And then, with Dr. Ike or myself, our conventional wisdom is we tell people we think surgical treatment prior, we don't know if it's going to make things worse, but if it does, it gets even harder. So, I mean, I can't tell people to do that, but we just it seems to be, if you have an opportunity to treat it at an earlier phase before it gets worse, it just seems better. But
say with the lymphedema in my lower legs, I have noticed a huge difference. My class 3 compression now hurts, and we're actually looking into reducing down a level because it doesn't seem like I need it as much. And I fell asleep the other night without my nighttime compression on and woke up to my lower legs no different than when I went to bed. They were soft, they weren't swollen, they didn't hurt. I even took pictures. I was like comparing from like earlier in the day where I had taken pictures without them, and there was like not a difference. And I've noticed a huge, my feet don't swell. Like it's really, the lymphedema part of it is like so much better.
And and that's what I said. I don't have research for that, but we see that with a lot of people, and I'm glad. And Cara's got probably one of the worst examples, and if that's getting better, it makes us happy too. So
I feel it's kind of like when there's a hose with a kink in it. I feel like the nodules from the lipedema are kinking up some of the lymph channels, so the lymphedema flows down but then balloons up. Well, those nodules aren't there now to push the pressure against the channels, so it's just flowing. That's just my thought.
I agree.
You can use all the medical terms in the world, but what really is working for people, real live people? That's why, and I have to do my little commercial because you all know I work for Lympha Press, and we have the Optimal Plus, which is the only pneumatic compression device that's cleared by the FDA for the treatment of lipedema. Dr. Herbst said last month it breaks up the fibrosis, but people on this panel have seen fat pads removed, how their mobility has been increased and pain decreased. And, you know, I knew it was cleared by the FDA, but I wanted to know how it would affect real people. And that's why I'm excited that it's another tool in the toolbox to help the lipedema population. And if anybody's interested in that, you can definitely private message me after this. Angelique, neuropathy, what's your question?
Yes, I have peripheral neuropathy, and it developed at the later stages of my lipedema without diabetes or anything like that being an underlying issue. So I was wondering if there is a correlation between the later stage lipedema and neuropathy, or cutting off those fine nerve endings and causing neuropathy, and if that is possibly reversible with treatment or surgery, or how that works.
A lot more people that I see have it in the hands, where their hands are getting a little weaker when they're grabbing things, or they'll pins and needles, and they'll just feel stuff. So I see it a lot more there. I haven't seen it a lot in the legs or in the feet. That's why I was kind of curious about that. On the legs, you just see a lot more of the certain areas where the superficial nerves are, and people say they it's weird. They almost feel like burning sensations, so they can't really explain what's exactly going on there, but. I haven't seen it, like I said, but I do see it in the hands. I do see it in the upper extremity, and I have seen people when we've debulked, they feel like it's less. They feel like they're able to hold things up more. They have some of the strength back and stuff like that. So that's where I've seen it.
So Angelique, if you don't mind me asking, when you say neuropathy, is it a strength issue or is it a sensation issue? Are you losing sort of sensation?
It's a sensation issue, numbness, and also the stinging, sharp pains, and sometimes the feeling like they're coming back awake again.
So is it particular to one side of your hand than the other, or front or back?
No, it's both hands, both feet. My feeling in my hands is more hypersensitive, but the feeling in the feet in some areas is completely numb. And one doctor actually said that it was because of the large bulges of lipedema, but like I haven't seen clarification on that.
I'm just thinking like because of, the cuff signs at the wrist and the feet, could tarsal tunnel, carpal tunnel possibly, be part of the fact that it's hands and feet. Particularly tarsal tunnel syndrome happens in the feet, and one of the things that contributes to tarsal tunnel is having vein disease. And one of the things we're sort of learning is that lipedema and venous disease are so common. It wouldn't explain the hands, but it sort of might explain some of like the bulkiness with the cuff sign, the bracelet sign, maybe putting some pressure on your nerves in the carpal tunnel and the tarsal tunnel, perhaps.
The way I explain that to people, kind of like how I explain surgery, I always say, you know, your nerves are coming out, inflammation, things going on. I would say your brain is trying to figure out what's happening to your body. And so as everything's coming through those inflamed areas, you can feel them and you can press on them. And so you're going to your brain, the nerves don't know what to do. And that's why you feel those weird things. That's why I said people will feel the shooting sensations. They'll feel and when they said the weakness, they'll feel like their hands are so asleep that they don't feel like they can grab things even though they have the strength. It's just, you do see that a lot. Like I said, I haven't seen the feet, but I see it in the hands.
I think, Angelique, you asked a question that a lot of people out there deal with and have experienced. So I'm so grateful for the feedback on that particular question. I'm going to get one more question in before we end up with, and we always end up with this, a word of encouragement for everyone out there from each of us here on the panel. The last question I want to ask, actually, I'll go to you, Dr. Schwartz. What factors affect the risk of lipedema regrowth after liposuction? This question is asked by our friend Cynthia Mason.
That's a really, really good question. So I tell people when I treat lipedema, liposuction is part of it, our manual extraction. When I'm finished with a surgery, the skin is here and the muscle and fascia are here. There's nothing left over. I mean, that's how I treat things. So you want to remove everything that's there. I can't treat a connective tissue disorder, but if I leave the nodules and leave everything that's there, I think it coming back or it not going away is a really big thing. And actually we have a video, but I have a lady where actually I did that. I was treating her arms and it was bloody on one side. So on one side, we did everything, removed the nodules, did everything. The other side, we didn't get that opportunity. The side we did that is like, you can touch her, she's healed, the skin is shrunk up. The other side, nodule's still there. It looks like we haven't done anything. And so we're going to do that in the future. But I think that's taught us a lot also. So for me, it is getting everything out. And then after that, it's things that are going to hold things in place, the compression, the diet, the exercise, and things Dr. Herbst and Dr. McHutchison understand more than I do, but yeah, I think that's where we look at.
Okay, so we really like you. Will you come back and sit at our table sometime?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me, of course.
Oh, listen, the more the merrier. So we got this lovely comment from one of the people out there saying, I feel like I'm in a group of celebrities. And I actually feel that way too. We've got the rock stars of the lipedema community here, and we couldn't be more grateful. We love and appreciate you, Dr. Herbst, Dr. McHutchison, Dr. Schwartz, and feel free to jump in on this last round of the roundtable. A word of encouragement to our audience. Siouxsie, you're up first.
I just want to say that the thing that keeps on blowing my mind is by staying connected and going to these webinars and watching these seminars and being part of these Facebook groups, there are so many things that we can do on a daily basis. And there are so many things that we can do to minimize the impact of this condition and, maybe even reverse it to some extent. And that's becoming more and more real to me, especially the more time I spend with these guys. So do your homework. And for those of you that follow me, if you send me a message, I'll send you the link to Dr. Herbst's video with a lot of stuff in there that I think is amazing.
Thank you, Siouxsie. How about you, lipedema diva, Cheryl?
Well, it's impressive that Siouxsie just said that, because I was going to say a lot of the same things. There is just so many different things that we can do to help ourselves these days. And as most of you know, I'm big on the food sensitivities and how that impacts lipedema. So hashtag remove food sensitivities and control your lipedema, okay? So we can take control of our lipedema. We just need to get started, put together the plan and do it every day.
Lippy Butterfly?
Yes, this month I got back my food sensitivities test since I'm in Cheryl's group. And it was overwhelming to see all of those things on there that I'm going to have to be eliminating. Ones that got me really bad, it was in alphabetical order, and it said cheddar, chestnuts, and coconuts. And I'm like, not everything that I love. But after I read it to my mom, her first thing was, well, what can you have? And it was one of those reminders that we are up against so many things, that there's a limitation here, and you have to not eat this, and you have to do these things. It's nice to take a moment and sit back and go, what can I do? And just celebrate the wonderful things that are still there for you.
I think that's great advice. I'm loving this. Okay, Pattie, you're up.
I say, look around at all the compassion that everybody in this group and out there watching has for each other, and try to internalize that for yourself as well. Show yourself some compassion while you're going through this journey that we're all on, and trying this and that, and getting frustrated when things aren't quite the way you want it to resolve. You know, just one day at a time.
Beautiful. PGP?
My thing would be, ask the questions. Reach out to who you connect with within the community. And if they don't know, we probably know somebody else that might, and we'll get you connected. But there's not a dumb question. We've all asked the craziest things, and there's things that we don't even really realize are common amongst us with the lipedema journey. So ask, because you're not alone.
Love it. I will cede the floor one final time to either of the doctors. If you want to say a parting word to our panelists, to our attendees.
I would love to say something, because one of the things is that the physicians we're problem solvers. We listen to people tell us problems, and we try to problem solve. And the beauty of this forum is that we get to, y'all are all trying everything under the sun, from mineral oil to, I don't know, the Wobezyme. And one of the things for me that I love at this forum is we get to hear what works for you and what doesn't work. And then when you tell us what does work, we can maybe put the science behind it and try and figure out another link to the puzzle. So I actually love learning from all of you because of what works for you and what doesn't. And I'm so grateful for your contributions.
That means a lot.
I'll say, actually, Dr. McHutchison basically hit the nail on the head, and that's literally it. I mean, I learn from my patients as much as they hopefully learn from me, but even learning from Cara, and even learning, I mean, the way we know surgery works, or the things that we do work, is by people telling us, because right now that's where we are. And if it doesn't, we go back. But honestly, thank you all. I really appreciate it.
And I'll just say, I ditto what Lindy said and what Jaime said. And I will tell you that Jaime and Lindy are my friends, and we're all huge lipedema geeks. And when we get together, we talk about lipedema all the time. So I want you to rest assured that we are here working, not because we have to, because we love it, and we know that we could make a huge difference. And again, it's all because of you and working with you that makes this all so worthwhile. I just got the chills.
I have the goosies. All right, I get the goosies every time we end one of these. I know this could go on way longer, but much love to all of you. And I get the last word, which is, Angelique said something about, do I have to give up all the things I love? And that really touched my heart. And then I thought, and what dropped into my spirit was to just remind all of you to love yourself most. Don't give up on yourself. Love yourself most. It is a joy and a pleasure to have had all of you here tonight. Thank you, everybody. You're amazing, and hope we can do it again next month. Hint, hint. All right, we'll be back. We will send you links. We will upload everything to the social channels. You're all the best. Mwah. See you again soon. Bye, everybody.